My name is Dana Crowley. I'm 47. And 5 years ago, I lost everything. And learned who someone really becomes when they think you owe them your life. I wasn't always this way. I had a career, a small but lovely apartment, a dog named Murphy, and shelves of books I'd actually read. But the layoffs came first. Then Murphy got sick. Then the rent hike. Then the car broke down. You know that saying? When it rains, it pours. Well, when it poured, I drowned. I spent 2 nights in my car, 2 more on a friend's couch, then a friend of a friend. And then, I ran out of people to call. So I sat in the back corner of a 24-hour diner with the same cup of coffee for 4 hours, trying to figure out where the hell my life went. That's when Eric found me. He used to be a neighbor 5 floors above me, polite nods in the elevator, once fixed a leaky faucet when my super took too long. We weren't close. But he always smiled. Always had a way of saying your name like it mattered. Dana? I looked up. He hadn't changed. Still wore 2 dark jeans and a weathered leather jacket. Are you okay? No, I said, surprised I didn't lie. He asked no more questions. Just said, come on. You'll stay at my place until you're on your feet. I remember hesitating. But the exhaustion won. And honestly, it felt like kindness. Like maybe the world wasn't done with me yet. Eric's apartment was bigger than I expected. 2 bedrooms. Warm lighting. Quiet. He gave me the guest room and clean sheets. Made spaghetti. Didn't ask anything about what went wrong. And I was so tired of explaining myself that his silence felt like rescue. For the first week, everything was fine. He made coffee in the mornings. Let me sleep. Gave me space. I applied to jobs, refreshed my resume, wrote cover letters. He even printed some for me. Don't worry, he said. We all fall. I just want to help. But by the 3rd week, something shifted. Subtle at first. He'd comment on how long I slept. Or that I wasn't trying hard enough. That some people pull themselves up faster. Then, he asked why I was wearing lipstick to an interview. What, are you trying to impress someone? He joked. It wasn't funny. But I laughed anyway. Because the roof over my head was his. He started appearing in the hallway when I was on phone calls. He asked for details. Who was that? You didn't say his name. It's just a recruiter, Eric. You sure? Sounded like more. He said it with a smile. But his smile had changed. I stopped calling people. Stopped opening windows. Started tiptoeing around the apartment like it wasn't mine. Because it wasn't. It was his. And so, it seemed, was I. Eric never hit me. Never yelled. Never touched me without permission. And yet, I was shrinking. Every day. He started cooking dinner for both of us. But only what he liked. If I didn't eat it? Ungrateful people starve first, Dana. Always said with a smile. Always like a joke. But never funny. He'd ask to see my emails. I'm just checking for grammar. You know I'm good with words. He wasn't. But I let him. Because the rent was still 0. And the streets were still cold. The job interviews slowed. Some employers stopped replying altogether. I tried freelancing, writing blogs, transcribing, but Eric would stand behind me, reading as I typed. Why would you write for other men? They're clients. And what are you to them? I closed the laptop. He asked about my childhood. My last relationship. Why I didn't have more friends. Then, he'd repeat those stories back to me, not to comfort, but to cut. Maybe if your dad had stuck around, you'd know how to be grateful. Maybe that ex of yours left because you never learned how to give back. He'd say it during dinner. Then offer to wash my plate. As if it balanced the poison. One night I asked, when did this become about owning me? He leaned against the counter, arms folded. It's not about owning. It's about balance. I saved you. You don't save someone and then get ignored. That word saved clanged in the air like a dropped knife. I realized he didn't see me as a guest. Or a friend. He saw me as a debt. And the thing about debts? He expected payment. I packed my things the next day. Everything I had, 1 suitcase, 2 blouses, and an old laptop. When I stepped into the living room, he was already there. "You're leaving?" "I have to." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere that doesn't ask for my soul." He didn't follow me, didn't scream. But as I walked out, he said, "Don't come crawling back. You'll regret this when the city chews you up again." I didn't turn around. Because he was wrong about one thing. I'd rather be devoured by the city than fed by someone who thinks I'm his property. I slept in a women's shelter the first night. Shared a bunk bed. Listened to someone cry behind a thin curtain. It wasn't comfort. But it was freedom. The next morning, I found a co-working center with a drop-in desk. $5 for 4 hours of Wi-Fi and coffee. It was all I needed. I opened my laptop. Updated my resume again. Wrote a blog post. Offered editing services on 3 freelancing websites. And when I got my first $75 job 2 days later, I cried. Not because of the money, but because no one was standing over me while I typed. Within a month, I had enough to rent a room, nothing fancy, just a bed and a window that faced a brick wall. But it was mine. The landlady didn't care what I ate. Didn't ask who I emailed. Didn't track when I left or came home. She just gave me the key. I worked. And worked. And worked. By 6 months in, I was managing freelance writers for a small digital publisher. By 9, I was saving. And by the 1-year mark, I had a studio apartment, my own dishes, a drawer full of fresh notebooks, and the beginnings of a story to tell. One afternoon, I opened a message request on social media. It was from Eric. "Saw your blog. Congrats." "You're welcome, by the way. You wouldn't have any of this if I hadn't helped you. Just remember that." I stared at the screen. He really believed that. That my healing was his doing. That my name still belonged to him. So I wrote back. 1 sentence. "Thank you for the couch." The control? I returned that the day I walked out. Then I blocked him. He didn't get the last word. He didn't even deserve the first one. Because I realized something, finally. Kindness without freedom is just another kind of cage. It took time to get used to my own silence again. Not the silence of fear, but the kind that wraps around you like a soft blanket, not a locked door. I woke up when I wanted, opened the window, played jazz, spoke to myself out loud because I could. I was free. And yet, something stayed inside me, a voice that whispered, "What if you hadn't left? What if I was still there?" Tiptoeing through a borrowed apartment, smiling at a man who measured his love in favors. It terrified me to think how close I came to losing not just my home, but my name. I wrote about it. First in drafts I never showed anyone. Then in short essays. Then on Medium. One story got picked up by a small online magazine. Then another. Then a podcast asked to interview me. Can we talk about how survival isn't always violence? Sometimes it's subtle. Manipulation dressed as protection. Yes, I said. Let's talk about that. After the episode aired, the messages came in. From women. From men. From grown children of narcissists. From people who said, "You just described my life. I never knew it had a name. I thought it was just me." It wasn't. A year after the podcast aired, I got invited to speak at a public library event. Small, local, unglamorous. But I said yes. Because it wasn't about glamour. It was about voice. I stood in front of maybe 30 people. Some gray-haired, some in hoodies, some holding notebooks. I told my story. Not with anger. Not with shame. Just truth. And when I finished, one woman stood up and asked, "What do you say to someone who helped you, but only so they could control you after?" I paused. Then said, "You say thank you for the moment, but you don't owe them the rest of your life." After the talk, she hugged me. Held on a little too long. Like she hadn't been held gently in years. I started consulting for nonprofits. Helping women rebuild after coercive relationships. Not always romantic, some with parents, siblings, roommates, bosses. Because coercion isn't always about romance. It's about control wearing the mask of kindness. Eric tried to reach out again. New number. New email. Same tone. I was just trying to help. I did more for you than anyone. You owe me more than silence. But he was wrong again. I owed him nothing. I gave him the kindness of my silence once. Now I gave him the boundary of it. I moved cities. Started over again. But not from zero. From solid ground. I adopted a senior dog from the shelter. Named him Bishop. He doesn't ask who I call. He just curls up next to me while I write. And sometimes I think about that couch. The one I slept on. The one that almost became a leash. I don't regret accepting help. I regret thinking help was the same as love. If you're hearing this, if you're in someone else's home, living by someone else's clock, questioning if your worth is measured by what you owe, know this. Real help sets you free. Fake help builds a cage. And you are not wrong for choosing the door over the chain.